The conversation began to drift naturally, moving from fishing tips to broader topics like politics. Jack spoke with a raw honesty shaped by years of hard-earned experience, far removed from the polished world of political sound bites. He wasn't interested in flattery or political spin. He spoke from the heart. "You know, I don't think people really understand the kind of work we do out here," Jack said, his tone carrying frustration. "Fishing is a tough life. We battle storms, economic uncertainty, and sometimes even our own government just to keep these waters open." Trump, having heard many stories from working-class Americans over the years, nodded slowly and looked out the window at the endless ocean. "I hear you," he said with sincerity. "No matter how high up someone goes, we need to remember the people who do the real work, the hard work. People like you keep this country running." Jack studied him for a moment, searching his face for any hint of pretense. "I hope you mean that," he said, leaning back in his chair, "because a lot of times it feels like we're forgotten out here." Trump nodded thoughtfully. "I don't forget. And I'll do everything I can to make sure others don't either." After the meal, the two stepped outside. The sun was beginning to set, casting golden light across the water. The sounds of the town felt distant, softened by the calm of evening. Neither spoke at first. They simply stood there lost in their thoughts. "This town's been good to me," Jack finally said, his voice steady. "But we're barely hanging on. If the government doesn't step up to protect places like this, I don't know how much longer we'll make it." Trump listened closely. He had heard similar stories before, but hearing it from Jack, someone who lived it every day, hit differently. "You have my word," Trump said after a long pause. "I'll do what I can to support people like you." Jack didn't smile, but there was a shift in his eyes, a glimmer of relief. "I'm not asking for much," he said. "Just the chance to keep doing what I love." The next day, Trump was scheduled to speak at a nearby rally. The crowd was large, full of energy, but as he stepped up to the podium, his mind kept returning to that small fishing shack and the quiet conversation with Jack. During the speech, he mentioned the small coastal town and the fishermen he'd met, without naming names. "Yesterday I shared a meal with a fisherman, a hard-working man who spends his days on the water to support his family. People like him, people who work with their hands and never ask for credit. They're the ones who make this country great. We must never forget them." The crowd erupted in applause, but more than the words, it was Trump's tone that caught everyone by surprise. There was a rare sincerity, a genuine respect that moved the audience. Clips of the speech spread quickly online. Social media lit up with praise for the heartfelt acknowledgement of everyday workers. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting the emotional moment when the president recognized those who often go unseen. But it wasn't just the speech itself that struck a chord. It was the authenticity behind it. In a world where politicians often felt disconnected from real life, Trump's connection with Jack felt real. Soon, interviews appeared across the country. Many were surprised by Trump's empathy. "This is the side of him we need to see more," someone said on a talk show. "A leader who takes time to listen and actually understand." Meanwhile, Jack had no idea his simple offer had started a movement. He went on with his usual tasks, mending nets, prepping the boat, unaware that the quiet moment he shared with Trump had sparked something far greater. That evening, when Jack finally saw the news, he stared at the screen in disbelief. There was Trump, talking about their meal, their conversation, and the struggles of people like him. "I didn't do it for any of that," Jack mumbled to himself, shaking his head. "I just wanted to share a meal." Still, as he watched, a quiet smile formed. Maybe, just maybe, his gesture had made a difference. The clip of Trump's speech continued to circulate, and soon Jack began receiving messages from strangers. Some were fishermen, others just people moved by what they'd seen. One unexpected message came from a local politician. "Mr. Miller," the message read, "we're working on policies to support local fisheries. I'd like to meet and hear your perspective." Jack was surprised. A politician reaching out to help him? It felt strange, but he agreed to meet. When the meeting happened, Jack remained skeptical. The man was well-dressed and spoke smoothly, but something about him felt different. He asked real questions, listened carefully, and seemed to genuinely care about the obstacles small fishermen faced, things like fuel costs, environmental rules, and unfair corporate competition. "I want to make sure small businesses like yours get a fair shot," the politician said. "We're drafting a bill that could provide grants and tax breaks." For the first time in a long while, Jack felt a flicker of hope. A week later, Jack's phone rang. He answered, and to his astonishment, it was President Trump. "Jack, I heard you've been in talks about those grants," Trump said warmly. "I just wanted to check in. Make sure they're treating you right." "Mr. President," Jack said, stunned, "I didn't expect your call. Thank you." "I'm just doing what I can to support folks like you," Trump replied. "You're the backbone of America." Jack didn't know what to say. For the president to call him just to check in, it meant something. "Thank you, sir," Jack said. "That really means a lot." Word spread quickly that Jack had become the unofficial voice for his community. Soon, fishermen from the area gathered to strategize. They weren't just talking about fish anymore. They were fighting for their way of life. Jack, though never a leader by title, was chosen to lead the meeting, not because of wealth or power, but because he had stood up and spoken the truth when it mattered. Months passed. Jack's business slowly recovered, helped by new policies and public support. The media frenzy quieted down, but the effects remained. The town began to thrive. New investments flowed in. People felt hopeful again. But for Jack, the biggest change wasn't financial. It was realizing that one small act, a simple meal, had helped spark a movement. One afternoon, as Jack readied his boat, he heard a familiar sound, a motorcade. When he looked up, Trump stepped out, wearing his usual smile. "Jack, how's the fishing?" he asked. Jack chuckled. "Fishing's good, Mr. President, but the community? Even better. We're finally turning a corner." Trump's expression softened. "I knew you would. Folks like you don't quit." The next day, Trump spoke in the town square, this time with an announcement. "Because of the dedication of people like Jack Miller, we're investing even more in America's small businesses, especially those protecting our coasts. We've secured funding to protect local fisheries from unfair competition and environmental burdens." The crowd erupted in applause. This was about more than just fishing. It was about recognition, about being seen. Jack's life kept changing. His business grew. More families found opportunity. The town thrived. But for Jack, the most meaningful part was knowing that a single meal had led to all of this. It had given his town a voice. In the quiet of one evening, Jack sat on his porch, looking out at the water. It all felt surreal, yet the changes were real. He had played a part in that. He thought of that meal again, how something so ordinary had meant so much. Motivated by what had happened, Jack began connecting with leaders from other small towns, encouraging them to take action, speak up, and support one another. "Don't wait on someone else," Jack told them. "Stand together, and you'll see the difference." A year later, Jack was invited to Washington, D.C., to be honored for his contributions. The award wasn't for fishing, but for leadership, for inspiring change. Standing before a crowd of politicians, business leaders, and the press, Jack said simply, "I'm just a fisherman, but I've learned that even a small act like offering a meal can change everything." After the event, he received a letter from Trump. "Jack, I'll never forget the day you shared that meal with me. You reminded me it's not about the grand gestures, it's about the everyday people who make this country great. Thank you." Jack smiled as he read it, filled with gratitude. Years later, people didn't just remember Jack for his fishing, they remembered his legacy. His story stood as a reminder of how one kind gesture could spark a movement. As Jack sat by the water, watching the sunset, he thought back on it all. That simple meal had changed his life, and many others.